Get into the action all summer long. Listen to that. Summer. Woo! The season's over. The NHL season's over. The NBA season's over. But there's still lots happening at Sports Interaction, including we got the draft coming up. We got free agency coming up for both of those sports, plus tennis, golf, whatever it is you're into, baseball, all happening right now at sportsinteraction.com/SDPN.
You can bet on those things. You can bet on free agency and draft.
Exactly. And we're going to actually throw a bunch of props up in the Dangles Doozy section as well. And remember, everything's you can do before games, live and play all summer long. Head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN or download the app to get started. It's 19 plus. Please play responsibly.
Welcome to Nailing the Apex, everyone. I'm Tim Hauraney. Please head on over to Spotify, give us a 5-star rating and a follow. Same goes with Apple Podcasts. Write a review. Let us know how we're doing. You can also watch us on YouTube as well. Joining me today, talk a little Canadian Grand Prix, some Formula One. We got Jesse Blake. Jesse, how are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, hanging in there. And we also have Mr. Adam Wylde. Adam, what's
going on,
man?
Guys? Tim, wow. I feel very weird about this. I'm sitting in my basement, and you're in a hotel at the Canadian Grand Prix right now. Like, it's like, oh, this is. I feel so cool, man. Thanks for inviting me on your cool show. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know if it gets any better than saying, oh yeah, I'm just at the now Formula One Grand Prix. No big deal. The world's just come to Montreal.
Question for you guys: do you like being on the road, sleeping in hotels, or do you like being at home, being in your own bed?
Ooh. Oh, Jesse, I'm going to let you answer this.
I love the events that take place around these big sporting events. So like the draft we're going to in Nashville. And I love being there because you'll see all of the media people and you'll get the vibe, and then you'll all go to one bar and you all hang out. And I love that aspect of being on the road. It's just seeing all of the people within your industry. So that's the only thing where I'm like, I can sacrifice not being home for that kind of stuff.
And Adam, what do you say?
Well, listen, my question's always, how comfortable is the bed? Because I can sleep anywhere. Man. And I love to travel. I haven't had the chance much because, I was so, broadcasting, right? You're like every day you're doing a new show. So you don't get to, when I was doing radio, we don't get to travel that much. But like, I know Jesse and I are going to Nashville with Steve and a couple of guys at the network, at the end of the month for the NHL draft. And that's always a blast. And it's, it's kind of funny, Tim, is getting a little sense of like Steve and Jesse's daily habits. And like, and actually having the building, the SDPN building, has also been very interesting because just because, it's not your house, but it's sort of like we're the owners of the network. So we kind of have to treat it with some respect, which is different from any workplace I've ever been in, where you just throw shit around.
Yeah.
And like, and like trying to figure out how to turn on the dishwasher, or Steve like randomly brought in fucking apples and bananas. And we're like, Steve, like, we're only here 3 days a week. Like, what do you do? And there's like a brown banana just wilting on the countertop. Like, please eat me before I die. And the fridge smells like rotten apples now. So yeah, I think, long story short, it's always kind of fun to get a sense of Steve and Jesse, but I am thrilled always to get back home. So if I can get like a weekend away, I'm good. Yeah. But if I was on the road, like you're going to be on the road this summer, I don't know, man. Like you got 3 or 4 Grand Prix just in the next couple months, don't you?
Yeah. I got
so
a couple.
Where are you going to be?
Yeah, so we got this one in Canada, then go home for 2 weeks, and then I go to the UK for a bit and hit up some Formula One races there. Yeah. Silverstone, yeah.
Amazing.
And then come back, and then back here for about a month, and then I think then I head down to Texas, and then Texas to Mexico, and then I'm either going to Brazil and then straight to Vegas, or I'm going to Mexico to Toronto, then to Vegas. So
wow. That Vegas one, that's going to be one of the biggest Grand Prix ever.
Oh, man.
Like, they're going to do it so right.
Oh, yeah. I think so. I think it's just going to be a massive, massive party with a Formula One race in the middle of it, essentially.
Yeah. It felt like Miami was like that too a little bit.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Oh, it definitely was. And hopefully you guys get to check that out next year, because it's just wild. That. I mean, the race, like the Miami race wasn't that good, but like the stuff that happened off the track or in the paddock is, man, it's another world. It's just so different. Like I've never seen so many celebrities or been able to get so close to celebrities in my entire life. It was wild. Absolutely wild.
Tim, what's your favorite part of going to a Grand Prix? Because I've never been to one. I know, Adam, you've been to Montreal before, but like as a spectator, not as like a media person, but as a spectator, what's the best thing about being there?
You know, like, I'm not gonna lie, Jesse. Like, I've never gone to a race as a spectator. I've only ever gone if I was racing or if I was like working within the media landscape of things, and so I've never really gotten that whole experience of like, I get to go to the race and then I get to go drinking with my friends and then we get to go partying at night and wake up with wicked hangovers and go to a race. And like, so I've never got to like do any of that. So I have no idea what it's like. I mean, I guess like Adam could probably speak to it more than I could in all honesty.
I mean, when I went, it was a bachelor party, and it, as far as bachelor parties go, it was pretty tame. It was 2016, so I think it was Rosberg, Hamilton that were far and away. Like they were lapping the field by that midway point. That car was unbelievable, and I think I was watching out for some young driver named Max Verstappen that I was a big fan of. I think he was 17 or something like that, racing for Toro Rosso. It was wild, and that was, to me, the story is just how good he was. But I think going to the race is an experience. I think the only issue I have with Jean Drapeau, which is where the park that it's in is just completely surrounded by water, and there's like one way off unless you're swimming. And so you're waiting once the race is over, and everybody brings like their case of 24 beers on their back. Like they've got Coors Light and Budweiser and all the other, they've all got, Budweiser backpacks, and you fill them up with beer and you bring them in, but then you're hauling those home if you're not finished them by the end of it. And you're standing in line for that subway for like 3.5, 4 hours. Like it was crazy. So that if I could get a helicopter off that, like a rich person, I would be so down. And that's the thing about race days. Like I used to go to Watkins Glen all the time for the vintage car races. And I tried to get down there this year, but I think, Tim and Jesse know this. My vintage Mustang that I own blew up on the way down, and it had to be completely rebuilt and is still being rebuilt in Buffalo. And so, but I loved waking up. And I love waking up to that smell of motor oil. And I love waking up to the sound of really like the real engines going by. Yeah. I know there's a lot of Formula One fans that complain about the fact we're in the hybrid era and the cars don't scream anymore. But I can remember Michael Schumacher, one of his original Jordan cars, was at the vintage car race one year. And it was like the star of the show. And we heard it one morning doing warm-up laps at 8 a.m. And that was my alarm clock, a little hungover, but it was great. Very, very cool. And so if you do get to go, Jesse, I think the thing you want to do is you want to do it two ways. You want to do it the rich guy way and the poor guy way. The poor guy way, you got to do with a bunch of people, and you go and you get a campsite, and you're dirty all weekend, and you never want to sit on the toilet seat. Like, get used to squatting. But it's an amazing experience, and you're covered in dirt, and you love it. And then the rich guy way, which is probably out of our price ranges now, but what you used to be able to do at Formula One weekends is, I know that people spent like serious money, but now it's like triple what it used to be.
Yeah.
And so you want to get the pit pass, and you want to walk by the cars and go through the paddock and stuff. But it's in North America, the expense of these tickets are so much that I don't think you can do it the same way. In Europe, it's not as bad. Like outside of Monaco, like I think you could do it in Spa pretty cheaply. The Netherlands, Zandvoort's not bad, right? Mm-hmm. Right, Tim? Like it's not crazy priced the way it is in North America.
Yeah, because I would say like going to the British Grand Prix, like that's a big price tag. But like I researched Spa first, and it was pretty reasonable. It was just the dates for me didn't line up trying to get back home for another event that I had to do. So I couldn't go and do it. But yeah, like when you go to like Austria, Hungary, like those types of races are very accessible. And I think actually like as a fan, you probably get a little bit more than like say like a British Grand Prix where it's kind of like you have your ticket for that one little space where, I think you go to like Spa and like, man, you can go anywhere almost. Like there's so much wide open territory where you can go and watch these cars, zip around this incredible racetrack. So that's a good point that you make. I mean, here in Canada, it's been interesting to watch how this race has grown over the years. Cause like I raced in it, from like 2001 to 2005, and then came back a few years later, and then it started to kind of like tail off a bit, and it was just the attendance wasn't really there. And then 2014 it started to turn around, started to get more, and 15 and 16 and 17 and then 18 and then 19 before like all the big Drive to Survive boom sort of really hit just before the pandemic. Like the race was really starting to come back, really starting to come back. And the only reason I noticed it was because of how long it took us to get off the island at the end of Sunday.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I noticed, like, just how big it had gotten, because it took us 2 hours to drive off of the island. I'm like, this is friggin' wild, man.
Yeah.
Like, I don't remember it ever being this busy or this big. And so once that Drive to Survive sort of hunger kicked in with this new fan base and everything, like last year, man, I'd never seen it this busy. I'd never seen the city this busy. Like, holy hell, guys! Like there is so much money it brings into the economy too.
Oh, it's
like
crazy.
It's so wild, and it's great to see, right? Like for me, I guess because I've been a part of it for just so long that to watch it be really big thing, and then kind of step back a bit, and then huge thing. It's been wild to watch, man. It really has.
What's it like?
I think North American fans, I think, would be a little shocked to know that tickets weren't always sold out. They weren't thousands of dollars at every point in its history. Like the Las Vegas, I've seen some of those packages. They're hundreds of thousands of dollars if you want to get the full billionaire package, you know? And I'm very familiar with that, the island there and getting off of it because I've been to Osheaga and it's the same problem. Montreal needs to figure that out, you know? Let's get a separate entrance off of that island. I don't know how they figure it out.
Give me a bridge,
it's always
please.
just a lineup. It's ridiculous. But Adam, you're about to ask something. Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to ask what it's like to drive because, you know, before every circuit now, every Formula One team puts out like, here's a quote from the driver about that particular thing. And, you know, God bless them, it's good PR. They'll do like, well, I sure love, where are we today? I sure love Abu Dhabi. It's great. Really warm this time of year. Like that, you know, and you know, they'll give you a little bit of a sprinkle of like what the track's actually like, but you know, this is one of the classic Formula One tracks. It's not to the level that Spa would be. It's not to the level that Monaco would be in terms of grandiosity. But in terms of drivability, at least in the video game, it's the most fun. I love the Canadian Grand Prix. What's it like to actually drive this course, Tim? And what are drivers looking forward to this? Or are they kind of like, oh, God, it's Canadian Grand Prix. This track's hard. Or I know it's going to be a tough weekend. How would you look at it?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, driving it is awesome because it's kind of like a go-kart track where like you can really use a lot of the curbs here, where in some other racetracks you kind of go to with Formula One, you can't really use the curbing because it'll upset the car way too much. Like here, you need to really bounce over the curbs to like get the lap time. And you kind of have to have this sequence for some of the corners, like you're braking, you're turning, rolling the speed. When do you get back to power? Hitting the curbing just right. As soon as the car lands, you're snapping back to the throttle a bit, making sure the steering is on. So there's so many different sequences for a lot of the corners that are on Circuit Gilles Villeneuve because it's so friggin' fast. Like there are so many corners here that are just super quick. And I think for the drivers, it's a huge challenge to drive a Formula One car here because in some of the turns, like turn 3, 4, you make a little mistake on your entry, like you're going to pound the wall. No problems. Like there's nowhere for you to go. There's no runoff anywhere. There's a concrete wall. And same with Wall of Champions. So the very last chicane at this track, you know, you get that sequence wrong and you're hauling ass in there like 250 kilometers an hour. And, you know, it's tough. If you've got it all wrong, man, you're going to be eating concrete. So it's a very difficult track, but I think the drivers as a whole and all the drivers I've ever spoken to love it here. They love the track. They love the fans. And I think one of the reasons they really love the atmosphere is because the fans are so educated here. Canadian, here's the thing, like everyone will take a look at the North American market or the USA or whatever, and they'll look at like, hey, you know, ESPN or whoever got 1.1 million viewers, right? And then, you know, they'll look at that as a success. And it is because of where it came from. But for Canada, it's like, you have to take a look at our population and how many people are actually watching. Like we get a lot of people watching Formula One in this country. It's more than what the States gets. Like it's
percentage-wise, no question.
Incredible. Yeah, like it's incredible. And the fans are educated, so it's awesome.
What do you have? You have 400,000 people at the race and another 500,000 or 600,000 watching at home. And I'm being conservative with the numbers on TSN. I know that they're even up from that. But you think about that, Canada's got 37 million people. That's 1 in 37 people watching something, which is, a Leafs game on a Tuesday night numbers, which is pretty good. And I'm not diminishing, like the Leafs are like king when it comes to ratings and sports in the country. Then you extrapolate that, multiply that by 10, right? Because that's what the American population is. It's 10 times that. So if you had a 10th of the American population watching any one event, you're a billionaire. Like you're making big money. Yeah. And so it is a much revered and exciting race and that sort of thing. And I think the fans of Montreal are crazy. One thing I want to before I forget to tell you guys, can you guess the cost of a weekend pass? I was there practice Friday, I was there qualifying Saturday, I was there race Sunday. We did not have pit passes because none of us could fully afford it. It was 2016. We were just trying our best. So how much do you think a weekend pass would have cost with that? And that's without food, drinks, that sort of
2016, you said?
Yeah.
Tim, you go ahead.
500.
Okay. 500. Jesse?
I'll go a little high, 650.
550, Tim. 550. Probably $3,000.
Yeah.
Probably.
Oh, yeah.
It's got to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be, man.
It's wild.
Tim, can I ask you about turn 10 in particular? Adam asked you about the track, but turn 10, the big loop that everybody knows, you got to really slow down. How slow do you get through that? And then is it just full throttle down that wall?
Yeah, so it's a great question because I actually just shot a huge piece on this, literally breaking down the hairpin. Wow. Literally, man, how you get into it, get out of it. And I got to sit with some drivers and talk about it because it's a great question because there's so many different types of lines you can actually take through that hairpin. Like some drivers do a V where they come in hard on the brakes and they kind of V the corner off. And then what they're doing is essentially where they're coming in, braking really, really hard and then cranking the steering lock on and then immediately leaving, unwinding the steering lock so they can get back to full power. And that's the thing with the hairpin is that you want to make sure that you're getting back to full power as soon as possible because of that long straightaway, because you can claw back a lot of time in qualifying, or you can pass a competitor who's in front of you. And when I say unwind the steering wheel or, loosen the steering lock, I'm talking about how much you've turned the steering wheel to get into the corner, because the more you turn the wheel on a Formula One car, the slower you go. And so you want to make sure you're trying to turn the wheel as less as possible. And obviously that has to do with the balance of the car as well. And what's the tire telling you? Can it do it? And unwinding the wheel and getting back to full throttle and using all of your exit, using all of the road, driving the car all the way out towards the wall. And that's another thing about this track is you literally have to aim the car at concrete walls and hope for the best sometimes. You're aiming at the Wall of Champions at 250 kph and you're like, hey, did I carry too much speed into here? Well, we're about to find out. It's here we go. So it's
the wall's about to tell me.
Yeah, it's a crazy experience, a crazy thing, right? And you're trying to override all these things in your brain that are telling you to stop, and you're just never. So, the hairpin's a really interesting turn on this track, and you're right. You can gain a ton of time, and you can also gain so much in your competitors there. It's awesome, and the atmosphere. You're coming into that. You're coming into that from literally the woods. So there's trees. And then all of a sudden you arrive and there's just a mass of humanity looking down on you. And you're just oh my God. It's and this whole thing just opens up in front of you in a split second. And it went from a very narrow tunneled vision of trees to people everywhere. It's so incredible, man. I just can't explain it to you better than that. That's the best I got.
That's cool. That's really cool.
So cool.
How many people were there when you were racing it, Tim?
I would say there was a lot. I mean, the attendance is definitely, I was saying, gone up. But I would say 2003, there was probably about 350,000 for the weekend.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was a lot because
That's so
we used
cool.
to actually get the numbers from the year before. So what we used to get the sponsored decks from races that we were going to be attending, so we could sell sponsorship on the car.
Right.
And so the series or the race circuits would give us, whatever. I mean, like for the Canadian Grand Prix in 2003, they would give us this huge deck. We would probably get it in the fall, and then we would start to try and sell when we get to the winter time. But you could see like the demographic, you could see how many people, where are they sitting, what do they buy afterwards. You could see all that stuff. And so it was super, super helpful, Adam. I mean, it's much more advanced now, but like, as a young driver who's just trying to make it and sell some sponsorship in this country, it was super helpful to get it. Yeah.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
I think one day we're going to have to do an episode, the three of us, on like what it actually takes to be a driver coming up through the ranks, and what does that mean going to getting sponsors and benefactors and all that. I think that's a part of the sport that I don't think people fully understand, and I think it is fascinating.
Yeah, because like
the cost of racing is something people don't consider.
Because it's like, and some people don't understand that. Like I didn't come from, like, we didn't come from money. Like my family didn't come from money. Like it just didn't happen. Like my parents did everything they could to help me get through the sport, but like it was a grind, man. Like I had to be 18 years old and like go into big corporations and try and convince them why they should like sponsor me, but not to go in there and just say, hey, can I have some money so I can go racing? It was like, hey, this is what your company does. They sell generators. We just had a huge blackout. Okay. We also have teams here that use generators. We also have other sponsors with companies who need generators to power their businesses. So you can do a B2B or a B2C. No problem. I think I've got this solved for you.
Wow.
And like you have to know that. Like you have to understand what you're selling, and you have to understand what the partner or the sponsor needs. And you kind of have to like scratch that itch, and you're 18 going into these meetings, man. It's like,
that's intense. That's really intense.
You're a salesman. You're not a race car driver. You're a salesman.
Exactly, right?
Man.
And then you're also doing like your own PR. Like I was doing my own PR. I was training myself. Like I had 30 hours of training a week. I had to do some PR every once in a while, but for the most part, it was always trying to sell sponsorship and train and then try to get my ass back in the car. Like,
wow.
That was it.
Adam, I'm thinking like if we need to fill up the sales staff, we can just go look at race car drivers, people who need to go chase
just
down
get Tim out there. He's got years of experience. Apparently, we should hook him up with our VP of sales, Christina. I wanted to ask you about a couple things, Tim, because like since we're all here.
Oh, yeah.
There was everything in Formula One is blown out of proportion, which is what I love about the sport. I'm sure the drivers get tired of it, but I love sports drama. It's my favorite thing. It's why I'm a Leafs fan. I love drama. I live for it. And I love Vanderpump Rules too. Really love drama, like right into it. So tell me about this George Russell quote. He said something about, he alluded to the fact that most drivers on the course have spatial awareness. Now, Jesse's a Mercedes fan, so whatever he says here, you can't trust.
Oh, God.
But he said there are about 3 guys who have no idea. Now, that has led to the internet taking stuff from his Williams days and supercutting all the crashes he was in, including the one with Valtteri Bottas at, I think it was in Belgium.
Oh, my God.
Where they gave each other the finger. Oh, it was Imola.
Oh, my God. That was a horrible crash.
That was a terrible crash. So my question to you is he right? And if there are 3 drivers that don't have the spatial awareness that perhaps the elite drivers, the 17 of 20 elite drivers do, who are they?
That's a great question. I wonder, like, because I'm trying to think, like, who the hell is he alluding to? Because, like
you don't want to count the rookies in that, right? Because they're rookies.
No. Yeah, as soon as you said like spatial awareness, I immediately thought of like Bottas and Russell like colliding and taking each other out, and whatever it was like either 2020 or 2021. I forget which year it was, but like ridiculous ridiculous that George is saying that. really is. And spatial awareness for drivers in F1 right now, and who could they be? Oh,
like if Mazepin was still racing for Haas, you'd know that you knew it was him, right? Like that's one thing that, and not to take pot shots at the guy. I do feel bad for.
I would say like I would say like maybe none of them, simply because of the amount of like information that is coming at these drivers is ridiculous. Like these guys are like doing systems checks. They're like having to memorize hundreds of pages of data on a steering wheel, and then getting a call from your engineering telling you what to switch the engine mode to. And you're having to do that while either like qualifying or like racing somebody. And like that requires a piece of capacity of brain to do that. I mean, I honestly don't think any of these drivers like have that issue, just because I don't want to, the IndyCar drivers are incredible. Formula One drivers are incredible. They're both incredible drivers. NASCAR drivers are incredible. What they do, WEC drivers are incredible. Rally drivers are probably, in my opinion, the greatest of all time. MotoGP riders are insanely like just incredibly talented. And so like, I would never sit there and say that like your competitors have issues with spatial awareness. I don't agree with that.
I figured that might be the case, and this is why I wanted to follow it up. Is he fucking with the rest of the field? Is he trying to mess with people?
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's a little offside by George, because it's a fraternity, right? Yeah. There's only 20 spots in the entire world, and it is so difficult to become an F1 driver. And those guys should be sticking together no matter what happens. You're all competitors against each other, but when you have like the media talking to you and asking you these kind of questions about like who's the weakest driver and all those things, it's up to these guys to stick together as this core 20, because they only have each other, even though they're competitors. And for George to say that there's a couple of drivers out there, I don't really like it. It stinks, It stinks that he's going this route with this quote.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you, Adam? Do you remember like when he said it? Like
it was a day ago. It was like a day or two ago. It wasn't long, and he's had quite the run with the press because the Verstappen stuff, and he actually played that off quite well when Max was taking shots at him after I think a couple of Grand Prix ago. But George is a very opinionated guy as it is, but he delivers it in such a British way that I think a lot of people take it as a, he's just, that's George. But it's like, he really means it. Like there's not, he doesn't, that guy, I don't think George is, I'm sure he laughs and stuff, but he's not like a huge joker. Like he's not Daniel Riccardo. Like, he's George Russell. He's serious and well-dressed and type A, and that's who he is. And I think it's I just thought it was a very bold quote coming from him. And I also like the fact for George that he's feeling himself, because last year at Mercedes was really hard. And, he did outscore Lewis, but it's still Lewis Hamilton. Like there's no question about who's the better driver here. And at least not for me. But it means he feels confident in his spot at that team, which is pretty hard considering that he's driving next to the greatest, in my opinion, Formula One driver of all time.
I got a question for you guys, because like so I did this thing for TSN, and it was essentially what you did was, in boxing when they have pound for pound, where it's like every fighter weighed the same. Who's the best fighter in the world? Okay, so took that idea and I applied it to racing, me and our producer. And so basically it's like for Formula One, and we'll only use the top 10 drivers, or we'll only use 10 drivers. I'm not going to say top 10. We'll use only 10 drivers. Okay. So I'll start with you, Jesse. Okay. So every driver in Formula One, exact same car, exact same machinery, everything, the exact same, basing it off of the 7 races we've seen so far this season. Okay. You got to base it off of that. We're not going back into the past. We're not looking at records. We're not looking at statistics. We're looking at just the last 7 races. Who's your top 10?
Top 10.
Top 10 drivers. They're all in the in the same car. Okay.
Starting from 10?
You can go 10 down to 1.
Where's my phone? I'm just gotta.
I'd have to start from the top and work back.
Like the best one?
Yeah, I'd have to start from one and then work down.
Yeah,
I'm going to start with Lewis. I think it's Lewis Verstappen, and you can switch them in whatever order you want. Alonso. 4 would be, oh gosh. No, not Perez. Let's do George. Mm-hmm. George has been impressive, especially because coming from Williams to the Mercedes, you see that the talent is there. So I'll go with George after Alonso, and then Perez, Sainz, Leclerc, Gasly, Norris. How many is that?
You got to keep track. I'm not counting.
Is that 1, 2? Hold on, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You got one more.
9. Stroll.
Stroll
would be 10.
So
okay, that was hard.
That is hard. 10 is hard. 10 is hard. I'm gonna give you mine. I think I'm gonna work backwards. I think what Alex Albon has done with this Williams car, and it's a better car than we've seen in 5 years from Williams.
Oh, this is interesting,
right?
Okay,
like that.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
The fact he's put that thing in the points, and listen, it's got speed. But like in a circuit like Montreal,
it's still a crap wagon. Like it's
a heaving beast. Like it does the balance. 10. Top 10, Alexander Albon for sure. That guy should be at one of the top teams. And he's already done it, but like he's so much better than he even used to be. It's crazy. I'm a big Albon guy. Like I really am shocked by him and sometimes and how good he is. I think because I've been disappointed in his performance, I'm going to put him here, but I think he's better than this. It's Carlos Sainz. Ferrari's had a disappointing year, but I'll put him at 9th because this Ferrari car is actually good, but him and Charles have been screwing it up. They've had their opportunities. There's no reason Ferrari needs to be this bad, but driver error has really plagued them this year. Last year it was a strategy. To me, this year it's driver error. So number 8, I'm doing that. Number 7, I think he's capable of more of this as well, and we're going to see how this car unfolds. Actually, you know what? No, number 7, I'm going to give to Lando Norris as well, who also drives it. And I love McLaren, so I'm a little bit biased, but it's a hunk of crap. I guess we're getting some upgrades. Is it this weekend from McLaren?
There should be big upgrades coming from McLaren. I was told either Austria or Hungary, so either next race or the race after.
Okay, I love the Austrian race. By the way, it's my favorite. It's the best. That Red Bull ring is sick. But yeah, I think Lando, the thing about Lando is that we know he's a great driver. Like there's a reason McLaren was him and Carlos, and this is why I like Carlos a lot. When they were teamed up at McLaren, they finished 3rd in the Drivers' Championship a couple years ago. It's not that long ago. So I think he's done his best with the bad situation. Qualifying 3rd is great. I heard you guys making fun of me with that wing damage right off the top. I was so excited. I was so excited. I'm looking at my wife, Natalie, and I'm like, all right, Lando's in 3rd. Like if he plays this right, maybe he finishes 8th or 9th. We're in the points. Like, let's go. And then first, we got to replace the wing. I'm like, well, it's over. They don't have a car to recover from that. The next one I would say is Esteban Ocon. I think.
Oh, nice.
There's a guy that don't you think it's funny that when Force India went under and they switched up the drivers because it was Perez and Ocon, that Ocon went an entire year without racing?
Oh,
it's a guy that had over 100 points. Like he's always been good on bad teams, and he's on a good team. And they're not a great team, but they're a very good team.
Yep.
And I think had there not been the crash between him and Gasly earlier this year, where they were going to finish like 6th and 7th or whatever it was, whatever the Alpine CEO came out and said about the team's underperformance, whatever, we're not having those discussions. We're talking about those guys, probably challenging Mercedes, Ferrari, and Aston Martin for 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, right?
Yep.
Like, and they still should, but it's going to take them some time to catch up. The next on my list would be Lance Stroll, who, again, and there's another guy that played for or raced for some bad teams, but still had some good results. Like Williams wasn't good when he was there. He still managed to do something with the car. And you know, this year with Aston Martin, what's been fascinating to me is the discussion around Lance, which is, well, can he keep up with Fernando? Is Lawrence going to have to replace his own son?
Yeah.
And we forget that 8 weeks ago, the guy broke both of his wrists, and he's racing a Formula One car. Like that first race alone, where he's in the top 10, you know, Alonso's third, he's eighth. And he's doing it with 2 broken wrists. He should be on everybody's top 10 list for that. And then I think on top of that, you know, last weekend where he got in front of Fernando, and then Fernando called, "Don't worry, tell Lance not to worry, I'm not coming for him." You know, I think Lance Stroll's a better driver. People count him out because his dad owns the team, but he's actually like, yeah, sure, okay, so his dad owns the team, and that's why he races for Aston Martin. But I still think Lance Stroll would be a Formula One driver. That's the point, right? And I actually think he's one of the better ones. I don't even know where that puts me.
You got 4. So you're now the next one would be number 4.
Number 4. Okay, so I'm gonna make this real easy. It's gonna be. Oh man, I forgot about Sergio. Poor guy, deserves better than this. But I'm gonna say in this order: George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, and Max Verstappen. Okay, and Max Russell really is walking on water right now.
Did you leave Leclerc off of your list?
Oh yeah, he's been terrible. He's unacceptable. Unacceptable. Because here's the thing. I'm rating it on listen, has Leclerc been good at moments? For sure. But if we're talking about levels of disappointment, is he the most disappointing driver on the grid?
Okay, Tim, I want to hear your list.
Oh, Adam was on a heater there.
Adam's list is absurd.
Bring it on.
Okay. All right, here's what I got. I've got this is my and like random people have been sliding into my DMs giving me shit. Stop sliding into my DMs. Like, it's creepy. Don't do it. It's weird. Okay? If you got a problem with my list, just tweet at me. Like, come on. All right, number 10, Lance Stroll. I got Lance Stroll at 10. Here's why. Monaco didn't go very well. Okay, and I dinged him a lot for that one. But at the same time, he did have issues in qualifying when in Monaco, so that did set him back a bit as well. Recovered well in Spain. And then when I look at it as a whole, hasn't had enough time in the car to get the confidence to get this thing up to speed. Would he have been on Fernando Alonso's pace rate out of testing if he had have gotten a full round of testing? Yes, I think he would have. But he's now just starting to catch up with Fernando. And number 9, I put Yuki Tsunoda. Okay, and here's why. And so my list is based off of the past 7 races, and that is it. I didn't base this off of any other year, any other season, statistics, nothing. Yuki Tsunoda is driving the hell out of that car, which is not good at all. That car is horrible. And Yuki's been probably taking it to levels it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be anywhere near battling for points, right? And he's gotten it there. Lando Norris, I had an 8th, Adam, so you'll be happy with that.
Go Lando.
Same thing with Yuki though. The reason I say Lando is because the car is not good. It's not. And he's been able to wrestle some pretty impressive performances out of it. Charles Leclerc is in 7th. I have Esteban Ocon in 6th. And then I have Carlos Sainz in 5th. And the reason I put Sainz ahead of Leclerc, similar to Adam, Charles hasn't been good in racecraft this year. He
made your list.
He did make my list for sure.
Unlike someone next to you.
So the reason why and I actually see why Adam didn't put him in. I get it. I think the only reason he made it in for me is because of his qualifying performances. Over one lap, he's been dynamite. But putting the entire race together, I know some races aren't his fault, but at the same time, there are races and there are qualifying sessions that are his fault. And one of those would have been Monaco. So George Russell, 4th. And I would have put George higher, Jesse. I would have put George, I would have put George ahead of Lewis if it hadn't have been for Spain, only because George has been really impressive in not great machinery in the W13. The W14 just hasn't been a good car, and I think Lewis has got himself something now. And I have a feeling we're going to see more really impressive things from Lewis moving forward. And I have Lewis in 3rd, and then I have Fernando Alonso in 2nd. Reason I put Alonso in second, 41 years old, or was he 42? I always mess his
I think he's 41. I'll look it up.
Yeah, because so Alonso, obviously an older driver doing impressive things. I think this 41. Is the best that Fernando has ever been, in all honesty. Like in Formula One so? Ever. I really do. Like the Aston Martin car is really good. I just think Alonso makes it even better. Like I think he drives like above the car, if that makes any sense. Like he takes the car to another sort of level that it probably shouldn't be at, but it is because he's just so friggin' good.
He's dialed.
So that's why, I just think he's just so dialed in right now. It's a great word. And then first I got Max Verstappen. And obviously I have Max at first because I don't even think we're seeing the best of Max just yet. We got a glimpse of it in Monaco, qualifying, third sector. Like, holy hell, he was going to roll that thing into a ball or get pole. Like, it was incredible. That was just a level of driving that I don't think we've ever seen a third sector at Monaco quite that good before. It was that good. Like he was impressive.
I watched the overlays of the two cars, and Max, just the way he gains time every time there's a little turn, and then because it's not just the Red Bull in straight lines, it's his driving ability, and every little inch of the racetrack he's able to dial back tenths of seconds from his opponents, and it all adds up. And he's just a fantastic driver, and he's really, it's amazing to watch because he's coming into like his prime. Like we're not even at peak Max Verstappen yet, and he's only getting better, and it's incredible to watch.
And I left Sergio Perez out of my
you did too.
Top 10. And I got a lot of hell for it too, but here's why. Like if we look at Miami, and I always use Miami because that's the turning point in this whole thing for Sergio, I think. You've got a guy who was on, he was on the front row, he's on pole. And then Max Verstappen, he's battling him for a championship. I can't remember what the points spread was between the two of them, but it was super close. It was so close that if Sergio had have won the race, he probably would have taken over the lead in the championship standings. But Max is starting like whatever it was, P9. Alternate strategies. And I would say arguably Sergio was on the better tire strategy for that whole race. But Max was like, understood the tire. He was brilliant in Miami, and that was a dominant win. That was just peak Max Verstappen. And then we get to Monaco, the crash that he has in Q1, and it's unacceptable. Like, how do you crash? How do you crash in Q1 in the first turn? Like, this guy's got so much experience in Monaco. Think about it. Like, he's one of the most experienced drivers on the grid right now. And that's what Monaco is. It's all about experience. You need experience to do well there. I don't care how good you are. I don't even care if you're a rookie and you're really good. You still need the experience to excel at that track in a Formula One car. And then we get to Spain. And that was a shocking performance. Like,
it was.
He was like P4 or something like that. Like, that's a car that should have been P2. Really should.
Easily.
Like, he could, like, if that was Max driving from where Sergio started that race from, it's P1.
So what is it? Like, what is it with Sergio that where that happened? Is it a talent gap? Is it a focus thing? What is it that, you look at Sergio's performances? What happened? Because there were a lot of people making jokes like, listen, if Max Verstappen's only competition is Sergio Perez, is he really that good? Because Sergio could beat him, right? There was that chat happening. What happened? What happened there?
It's interesting to hear, like, from Christian Horner at the end of the Spanish Grand Prix, and it's kind of like, okay, so the pressure is off of Sergio now. We're probably going to get some, great performances. And obviously I'm paraphrasing what he had said, but essentially that's in and around what he had said. So when you hear something like that, I assume that it is the pressure. It's the pressure of being maybe that close in a championship and knowing that you have the equipment that can win a championship, and also at the same time knowing who your teammate is, who is Max Verstappen, and you got to try and take this guy down. I would say if we were doing this pound for pound list heading into Miami, Sergio would have been like in my top 5, no questions asked. None. And I actually thought, and I said it on this podcast, he had a chance at maybe getting winning this championship this season. And I did say that. And I just think that the the pressure and the lack of consistency is what's really held him back. And I think when you're battling a driver like Max Verstappen, you need to have that consistency. I mean, do you guys remember 2016, the Hamilton Rosberg clash? That is like where you've got an extremely talented teammate, and the other one is having to extract the performance from how they engineer the car and keeping that consistent so you can keep the pace or be just a little bit better. And I think like for those two, I use them as an example because Lewis is like a generational talent. And I'm not trying to like dismiss anything that Nico Rosberg has done, but I don't quite put him in a generational level. Did he win a world championship? Yes, he did. Is he talented? Yes, he is. But I think he's talented in different areas. And I think he used that to his ability to win that championship and have that consistency that I speak of. And I think for Sergio, just not there right now. Is not.
Daniel Riccardo a real threat to take the seat, or are those just rumors because people love Danny?
Yeah, I think they are. That's a great question. I mean, I spoke with him in Miami, and it's interesting because, like, you guys remember, like, we did the TikTok of Nick DeVries potentially being out of his ride at AlphaTauri. And, you know, he simply just said, look, I'm not going backwards. Like, the next team I drive for is going to be a front-running team. And I understood that. I'm like, look, I get that for sure, but there's not that many seats available. And at the end of the day, I don't think the team really knows what his form is. And so once we get to the end of the British Grand Prix, Daniel Ricciardo is going to get a tire test in the RB19. And I think that's going to give Red Bull some time to evaluate where he's at and where he's at with his performances and see where he lies. But I don't see him replacing Sergio. I mean, the one thing I'd look at, and you know, Adam, it's like the sponsorship side of things, right? Like Sergio, when he's on. He's an incredible driver, and he's been a good number 2 driver, and he's got some backing too, right? Like he's got
great backing, great backing, yeah.
And it's like I don't know how you just kind of let a driver like that go. Just, you know, like swap him out, like swap Daniel Ricciardo in and Sergio out. So I don't see it happening. I see Sergio finishing it out at Red Bull for sure. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
Do you think that you know, obviously I think so. It's interesting listening to, you know, Helmut Marko speak versus Christian Horner speaking, because they talked to Christian and he's like, he's about, and he was being facetious. He's like, he's about 10 minutes away from being ready. Came in a little skinny or whatever. And then, you know, Helmut Marko, who was a part of and fostered the Red Bull Young Drivers program, for which, you know, Carlos Sainz and Max Verstappen and Daniel Ricciardo and Daniel Kvyat and all these other drivers that, you know, raced for them, Alex Albon. You know, he's headed up that program for years, and, you know, Daniel's one of his guys, and he said, well, I don't know what happened to his competitive spirit. And now I wondered if that was him trying to get under Daniel's skin in the press and being like, you know, I want you to push harder. I don't think anybody could convince me that Daniel Ricciardo has lost his competitive edge. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think you can be depressed. I think you can be in a tough situation and hate driving for the team you're driving for. We all have worked for companies that we haven't liked working for. But I just, you know, do you see him on the grid again? Or like, you know, because everybody's talking about 2026 already. To me, that's a long way away. People were talking about Team Audi, like, oh, Yuki could be up for that or this or whatever. And it's like, man, that is a long, long haul.
Yeah, it's like, what's his shelf life? Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
he's in his 30s.
Yeah, like I don't know. I don't see that happening. I think if he's not in a competitive ride by next season, I think that's it. That's my opinion, anyways. I mean, who knows what he's thinking, right? Like, no, none of us know. But from an outsider's perspective, and being out of the race car for that long, it's never good. Like you had mentioned Esteban Ocon being out for a year, and that's a really good example because, and same with Fernando Alonso, right? They were both out for, you know, Fernando was out for 2 and then Ocon out for 1, but coming back in, you spend that time getting back up to speed. Like you're not right back up to speed, right? And so the team is actually losing performance because of that, because they're waiting for you to like get back up to speed so you can get on the car's level, so you can then tell them, this is what I need from this thing, right? And that takes a long time. That's not like a couple days of testing or a couple weeks of test. That's like months to build the confidence, to remember everything, to fine tune yourself again. And like, I think being out for 2 years is a little bit too long. And I say Fernando Alonso because I think he's the exception to the rule.
But he's generational.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not saying that Daniel Ricciardo is a bad driver. It's not what I'm saying. He's extremely talented, and I think he could have been a world champion. And I also think that if he were given the proper opportunity, and he was on form, I think he could battle for a world championship for sure. 100%.
Can I say the word IndyCar?
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Is that a possibility for Daniel Ricciardo? I'd love to see it.
Yeah, for sure. Like he's never showed a real interest in it. And I know like he's always said in the past, and again, I'm paraphrasing here, but he's always said in the past, it's like, I don't think he's a big fan of the ovals and that type of racing. And I can see that. But the funny thing is, Jesse, is like all the drive, and you guys are going to talk to Romain Grosjean about this. And, one of the things with like the drivers that leave Formula One and they're like, yeah, I'm just going to go do IndyCar and I'll do the road and street courses and it'll be great. And then they get to the 500 and they see like, oh, wow, this is a thing. And they're like, oh, wow, this takes a lot of skill. Like, oh, this
and
is
power steering.
Yeah. Like, and they're like, oh, this is a challenge. Then the wheels start to like, maybe I want to do a full season of IndyCar. And then Grosjean like goes and does it. He's hooked. Guy's hooked.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'd love to see Daniel Ricciardo in a Formula One car again. To me, Haas still makes the most sense. I know they were interested in that, and he doesn't want to play or race for a non-front running car. But I mean, I don't think they've had the performance they've wanted to this year, especially from Magnussen. And you wonder, Gunther was interested. You wonder, and Daniel's always wanted to race for Ferrari. Apparently, at least it's a Ferrari engine.
That's a good point. Hey, you saw Gunther on Wednesday when he was at Habs practice, right?
Yeah, he was in the I didn't know. Was he a goalie at some point? Like, what is this?
I had no idea he could skate.
He went out and played net. I don't know who he stopped. He stopped one of the Canadians players, and then another one of them scored on him. And then he stopped the F1 Grand Prix mascot, the groundhog, and then Yuppie scored on him.
Which is amazing.
Like legit, he was trying. Like Gunther was like trying to stop these pucks.
Wow.
Right? Because like he's a huge hockey fan. Gunther is. So he's whenever he's not like racing or watching racing or being a part of it, he's watching hockey. Like that's one of his like pastimes, right? Like his hobbies, I guess you would call it. Yeah, it's hockey. He's a huge ice hockey fan, he says. So
that's pretty cool.
I always knew I liked
cool. But man, seeing him in like a Montreal Canadiens like goalie uniform, that was sensational.
So Tim, before we get to the Romain Grosjean interview, tell us what you're up to this weekend. People following you and that sort of thing. Like, what are we going to see?
Absolutely. So, going to try and get to as much social media stuff as I can. It is a challenge. I'm not going to lie to everyone because it's like I'm up against it all weekend long, where I'm doing a massive amount of interviews, like interviewing drivers and trying to generate that content, helping produce a little bit more content and stuff like that. But we'll have the podcast on Sunday following the race. It'll be Sunday late evening, so you'll probably get it Monday morning. But yeah, I always like hearing, I always put out those posts on Twitter, like, who do you think's going to qualify? 1, 2, 3, who's going to win? 1, 2, 3. I'm actually legitimately interested in what their thoughts are on that. Like, I want to know what people think. Like, who do they see getting pole? Who do they see second? Who do they see third? I love that stuff. I really do. So yeah, when I post that, please respond to it. It's awesome. Guys, this has been a ton of fun. Thanks very much for doing this. I always have a great time when you guys come on, right? Like, it's just Like an hour goes by.
I'm honored to be on this with you.
Yeah, we love
you're
coming
there,
on with you, buddy.
living your fancy life, hotel to hotel, and we're just the slums at home joining you.
Fancy stuff. Guys, thanks again. Going to throw to Adam Wylde's interview with Romain Grosjean. Thanks again, everyone, for listening.
Welcoming Romain Grosjean back to SDPN and nailing the Apex. Romain, thank you so much for making for taking the time. Obviously, we've got the Indy coming up in Toronto. I want to talk about that. The Canadian Grand Prix is this weekend for Formula One, and I do want to ask you about that. But first, I think, how are you? How are things going? It's been a really competitive year for you.
It's been great. It's been awesome. Excited to be racing at the highest level and doing great. I think we've been very competitive everywhere, especially on street course. Toronto should be very good to us.
I was watching your YouTube channel, and it's great, by the way. I love that you're doing this. You were talking about some of the differences, and people always ask you about the differences between Formula One and Indy. And one of the first things you talk about is the power steering, and the fact that the Formula One's all about G-force. IndyCar is all about kind of controlling your steering wheel, getting to the right spot. So, are you more like summer bod jacked than you've ever been before?
Yeah, I had to. The first time I jumped in the car, I couldn't turn the steering wheel in high-speed corners. I was like, I had to lift off the throttle. I was like, that's bad. That's not going to go good with me. So went back to the gym, worked hard, especially through the winter. And the season keeps going, and then you kind of lose a little bit of your muscles, but you get the specific one for racing. So, it's still very tough. It's still challenging. I love the fact that we finished the race and we're completely exhausted. And I love that because I think you've given it all, and then you're ready for a good burger.
Yeah. I'm just gonna say, what do you have directly after the race to kind of? Because I know you guys lose 10 to 12 pounds every single race.
We lose a lot of water, but not. It's just water. It's so hot in the car that you just lose a lot of water. But yeah, you normally drink quite a lot after it, and. When we're in Wisconsin, I go for brats. Wherever else, normally go for a burger. And
what's on your burger? What's your burger toppings?
Man, easy. Just a lot of meat, good meat, bit of cheese, onion, tomato, bit of ketchup. Nothing crazy.
Perfect. Now, when the Canadian Grand Prix is this weekend, it's in Montreal. And I want to quickly ask you about it. You've raced it a bunch of times, and obviously it's a big deal in Canada, just like the Honda Indy is in Toronto. Montreal is obviously a Formula One classic course. What do you remember about that course? And for those of us who dream about being drivers like you, what were the types of things that you needed to prepare for going into that weekend?
Man, it was awesome. I love going to Montreal. I won last year for Formula One. I'm excited this year, that to be able to watch the race. You know what? I'm going to tell you something. I wish IndyCar was racing in Montreal and Toronto, the two. I think it would be a perfect combo. I would love to go there. It's a very tough racetrack because most of the year it's in the winter it's like a cross country ski track.
Yes.
In the summer you can cycle or use your go running on it. And then you go Formula One, and it's super dusty, and it's super slippery, and then it gets better through the weekend. But hey, man, I need to have a word with IndyCar so we can come and race in Montreal.
I like that a lot. I mean, with Honda Indy, it's the middle of July. It is hot, really hot in Toronto, and it is a road course. What do you think about? Why do you think that you guys have found so much success with road courses this year?
I think setup-wise, we've been very good. I think we've been very, very good on every racetrack. Honestly, Indy 500, we still have a bit of work to do, but everywhere else, we've been up there. So I think we're going to be good in Toronto. I think we're going to be good at a lot of other places. I'm just excited for the season generally. I'm just excited to jump back in the car and try to win races. That's all I like doing. And, if we could have more races, including Montreal, then that would be great.
That'd be really good. Now, the Honda Indy takes place in Toronto at Exhibition Place, July 14th to 16th. Kids under 12 with an adult with a ticket get in for free. Your Ontario Honda dealers present Honda Fan Friday. There's a Make-A-Wish Canada offer as well. And there are single day and weekend passes available. Romain, the Honda Indy was the first race I ever went to. And it's kind of the thing that set the tone and made me into an auto racing fan. And I was a big Paul Tracy and Alex Tagliani and these Canadian drivers that, you could cheer for. And then at the same time, Jacques Villeneuve was winning.
the Formula One titles with Williams. What was your first race? Can you remember it? Like your first professional race that you went to with your family?
Monaco 98.
You went to Monaco? 98 as a kid.
Thursday. So I went for the free practice. I remember being in front of the toilet, and David Coulthard was there, and he was queuing behind me. So I gave him, priority to go to the toilets. I had an autograph from Jacques Villeneuve in my bedroom because he used to go to Wylde. It's a ski resort in Switzerland, and my family is from there. So my grandmother, she was at the restaurant and he was there, so she went to ask an autograph for me. Which was very kind and very cool. And that's the first time I went to a racetrack and loved it and made my life out of it.
No kidding. And you got to race that track, which is pretty darn cool.
Yeah, I got to race a lot of tracks and I love it. It's just the best job you could hope for. Well,
listen, it's always a pleasure to talk to the Phoenix. Thanks so much for taking the time today. And we're rooting you on in July here in Toronto.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. And I'm excited to come and have some fun in Canada.
Thanks, Romain.